Thank you. This amendment is a straightforward defense of taxpayer dollars and of life. This amendment would reinstate two longstanding pro-life protections that also protect taxpayer dollars. So first, it would reinstate the Dornan Amendment, that's also known as the DC Hyde Amendment. This prevents appropriated funds from being used to pay for abortions in the District of Columbia. This includes preventing either federal or DC revenues from paying for abortions, except in the case of rape, incest, or danger to the mother's life. Taxpayers overwhelmingly support pro-life protections on their hard-earned tax dollars, but unfortunately, without this amendment, taxpayers would be forced to pay for hundreds of abortions. That's exactly what happened the last time DC Hyde was gutted. From 2009 to when it was reinstated in 2011, Washington, D.C. paid for 300 abortions, and at that time, there was at least a prohibition in place on some of the federal funds, and that is not the case anymore. So if this amendment fails and all restrictions on taxpayer funding of D.C. abortions are lifted, the Charlotte Lozier Institute estimates that approximately 1,500 abortions will be funded in D.C. each year. This includes late-term abortions for any reason. The second part of my amendment would reinstate the Smith Amendment, simply prohibiting taxpayer funds from being used to pay for elective abortions for federal employees. Iowans should not be forced to pay for bureaucrats' elective abortions. This is insane, but that's what the underlying bill does. All the Smith Amendment does is ensure that taxpayer dollars are not going to fund elective abortions for federal employees, which would clearly be a misuse of taxpayer funds. And as we've discussed here today, there are many number of priorities that we could be spending those taxpayer dollars on. There is absolutely no reason for a federal bureaucrat's health plan to cover an elective abortion paid for by hardworking Americans. And make no mistake about it, taxpayers will be paying for these abortions. Taxpayers pay the salaries of federal employees. They pay all of our salaries in this room and about 75% of health benefit premiums. So that means that taxpayers are supporting approximately 8 million bureaucrats' health benefits. The majority of those taxpayers do not want their hard-earned paychecks funding bureaucrats' elective abortions. So without my amendment here tonight, taxpayers will be paying for about 17,000 bureaucrats' abortions every year at a cost of $9 million, and that's not even accounting for inflation. Speaking of inflation, taxpayers are worried about that right now. Groceries, gas, and yet we want to steal their money to pay for elective abortions for bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. It's shockingly out of touch. And that's why this amendment is so important. It's common sense, and it's as much pro-taxpayer as it is pro-life. I urge adoption of this amendment. Madam Chair, I yield back.